The little girl had not spoken a single word in 3 years. Then, on an ordinary rainy afternoon, a stranger walked into her mother's mansion to fix a broken security panel, and within minutes, she did something that made the most powerful woman in the room freeze where she stood. She reached for him. Not her mother. Not any of the specialists flown in from 3 countries. Him. What happened after that would rewrite all 3 of their lives. Renata Ashworth was one of the most powerful women in the country. At 38, she built a technology empire worth billions, lived in a house that overlooked the entire city, and could make executives twice her age go quiet with a single look across a boardroom table. None of it had ever been able to buy the one thing she actually wanted. Her 9-year-old daughter, Wren, had stopped speaking 3 years earlier, after something so frightening that Renata still couldn't say the word for it out loud without her voice catching. Since then, Wren communicated through drawings, gestures, and a small spiral notebook she carried everywhere, its corners worn soft from being held. She understood every word spoken to her. She simply never answered back. Renata had spent millions trying to fix what money was never built to fix. Doctors told her Wren needed patience. Specialists said emotional safety mattered more than expensive equipment. Renata tried to give her both, but a demanding career kept pulling her away more often than she wanted to admit, and every night she came home hoping, and every night, the house stayed exactly as quiet as it had been that morning. One stormy evening, a security failure knocked out half the cameras across the Ashworth estate. Renata's security company sent a technician named Silas Bowen. He was 36. A former Navy SEAL who'd left the service years earlier and now spent his days quietly repairing alarm systems and camera networks, raising his 8-year-old son, Miles, alone since his wife's death. He wore a plain dark work jacket, boots that had clearly seen more than one job site, and carried a scuffed metal toolbox that didn't hint at anything he'd once done for a living. While checking the panel near the library, he heard a faint sound behind him and turned to find Wren standing in the doorway, notebook pressed to her chest, watching him with the particular careful stillness of someone deciding whether a room was safe. Silas didn't move toward her. He smiled once, stepped back to give her space, and went back to his work. Wren stayed in the doorway. A few seconds later, she stepped closer, close enough to notice the small metal compass hanging from a cord around his neck. He touched it once, gently, then pointed toward her notebook, asking without a single word if she wanted to draw it. She hesitated, then opened the notebook and drew a small circle with 4 directions marked around it. Silas recognized it immediately. He tore a scrap of paper from his own notes and drew the same symbol, then added a narrow path leading toward a house. Wren studied it for a long moment. Then she added a second path beside it. For the first time in months, she smiled. Renata had been watching from the hallway, barely breathing. Her daughter, who flinched from strangers, who took weeks to warm to new therapists, who had never once willingly closed the distance between herself and someone she didn't know, was sitting cross-legged on the floor beside a man she'd met 10 minutes earlier. Then Wren reached for his hand. Silas offered it, unhurried, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Wren wrapped her small fingers around his. Renata's chest went tight with something that wasn't quite joy and wasn't quite grief, a strange, painful mix of both. Her daughter trusted an exhausted stranger with a toolbox more easily than she trusted any of the people Renata had paid a fortune to bring into their home. After Silas finished the repair, Renata asked him to stay a few minutes longer. She wanted to understand what had just happened. He told her, plainly, that he'd learned something during his years in the service, that frightened people didn't always need instructions. Sometimes they just needed someone willing to sit beside them without demanding anything back. "Do you think you could help her speak again?" Renata asked. Silas looked over at Wren, sitting near the window with her notebook. He didn't promise a miracle. "I could try to help her feel safe enough that she wants to," he said. That answer stayed with Renata longer than any specialist's report ever had. The next morning, Silas came back, this time with Miles. Miles was shy at first, the way most 8-year-olds are around a house that big, but he warmed up fast once he pulled out a stack of paper airplanes he'd folded himself. Wren watched him fly one across the room, then opened her notebook and started drawing airplanes of her own. Silas turned the drawings into small games without ever once asking her to speak. He gave her reasons to communicate instead of demanding that she perform it. Days folded into weeks. Wren started laughing, quiet at first, then real. She began making small sounds, half-formed, testing the shape of her own voice like someone checking if a bridge would hold weight. Renata watched from doorways and hallway corners, hardly daring to breathe too loud in case it broke whatever was happening. Just as hope started to take root, Silas got news that threatened to pull it all apart. His landlord had sold the building he and Miles lived in. He had weeks, not months, to find another place. His repair business barely covered rent as it was. When Renata offered him money, he refused it outright. When she offered him a permanent position managing security for her company, he turned that down too. "I want to earn my way forward," he told her. "Not be given it." Something shifted in Renata in that moment. She'd spent years surrounded by people who wanted things from her. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she was looking at a man who had every reason to take what she offered, and chose dignity instead. Then came the afternoon nobody saw coming. Wren was sitting at the kitchen table while Miles showed her how to fold a paper airplane with a sharper nose than the ones they'd been making all week. Silas stood nearby, fixing a cabinet hinge that had been loose for months. Renata walked in with a cup of coffee, half listening to the two kids laughing over a plane that kept nosediving into the floor. The airplane slipped out of Miles's hands and skidded near the stove. Wren looked at it. Then she looked at Silas. Her lips moved. A small, cracked sound came out of her throat, the first sound any of them had heard that wasn't laughter or a half-formed hum. Everyone in the room went still. Silas turned around slowly. Renata stopped breathing entirely. Wren tried again. This time, the word came out clearer. "Daddy." Silas's face changed instantly, a flash of something complicated crossing it. Renata pressed a hand over her mouth, tears already blurring her vision. But Wren wasn't looking at Silas when she said it. She was pointing past him, at a framed photograph sitting on the shelf behind them, a photograph of her own father, the one she hadn't spoken about in 3 years. Silas understood before Renata did. Wren wasn't calling him anything. She was finally, after 3 years of silence, saying something about the person she'd lost. It wasn't a miracle. It was a door, finally cracking open. Over the following weeks, Wren's words came slowly, one at a time, then in short, uncertain sentences, her voice soft but unmistakably hers. Renata finally understood what her daughter had needed all along. Not another machine. Not another specialist flown in from overseas. She needed someone who would stay. Someone who would listen without flinching, and never once make her feel like something broken that needed to be fixed on a schedule. But Silas's own life was still unraveling underneath the surface, even as Wren's began to heal. One evening, Renata found him sitting alone outside on the back steps, looking at an old photograph of Miles's mother. He admitted, quietly, that after losing his wife he'd spent years believing his only remaining purpose was protecting his son, that somewhere in all of that, he'd forgotten how to build anything for himself at all. Renata sat down beside him. For once, neither of them talked about money, or contracts, or job offers. They talked about loneliness, about their kids, about the strange, unplanned second chances that sometimes show up disguised as a broken security panel on a rainy Tuesday. Months later, Wren stood on a small stage at her school, in front of a full auditorium of parents. Renata sat in the front row, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Silas sat beside her, Miles's hand in his. Wren walked up to the microphone. Her hands were shaking. She looked out at her mother first. Then she found Silas in the crowd. Then she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but the room was quiet enough to hear every word of it. She thanked her mother for never giving up on her, even during the years when giving up would have been so much easier. And she thanked Silas, not for fixing her, she said, but for teaching her that being afraid didn't mean she had to stay silent forever. Renata cried without trying to hide it. Silas lowered his head, blinking hard, failing to hide his own. After the ceremony, Renata found Silas near the back of the auditorium. "I told you once I'd give you everything," she said, if you could help her speak again. "I remember. I understand now that you never wanted everything." She held his gaze. "You just wanted to help." She offered him a permanent place, not just a job this time, but a home for him and Miles, and something closer to family than either of them had let themselves imagine. Not because she owed him. Because some people, she'd come to believe, enter your life for reasons that have nothing to do with debts owed or favors returned. Silas accepted only one part of it, the chance to build something real. Not a billionaire and a former soldier. Not a powerful woman and a struggling single father. Just two people who had each lost something essential, and had somehow, without meaning to, helped each other find pieces of it again. Wren ran between them and grabbed both their hands at once, pulling them toward the door like she couldn't wait another second to leave. For the first time in 3 years, the Ashworth house wasn't quiet anymore. It was full of laughter, mismatched paper airplanes left on every surface, and a voice that had finally decided it was safe enough to use. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't hearing someone speak for the first time. It's watching them finally believe they're safe enough to.